Thanks everybody for joining. If I have not had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is Bristol Cottrell. I am one of the business development managers at HEXIS, based out of Cincinnati, but most of the rest of the folks are in Atlanta, Georgia, where HEXIS is based out of. So today I'm waiting on my partner to kind of give you a quick in-depth overview of HEXIS Precut Labs. But before we do that, and while I'm waiting on him, I kind of wanted to give you guys an overview on it, why it was created, all of that good stuff. So HEXIS Precut Labs, or HPL, is in a nutshell a full tint and PPF software, template software. So you will have thousands and thousands and thousands of templates for full vehicle templates, partials, windshields, interior, because we have an interior and a windshield PPF, as well as exterior of the vehicle PPF. So there's thousands of templates in there, obviously including window tint. But the purpose of it is when you're doing a vehicle, instead of bulk cutting the film, you have access to a template software, so you're not wasting as much material. Now, when you're working with something like color change, like a PVC film, where it's, just these are dummy numbers, but when it's, say, like $3 a square foot, waste isn't that crazy. But when you're talking something that's like $5, $8, whatever it is, a square foot, like PPF, you don't want to waste product. And that's kind of the whole purpose why we wanted to have a template software, is so that when your customers come in and they say, hey, I've got a 2027 Jeep Wrangler, I want the whole thing PPF'd, you can find the template, it sends it to the plotter, and it cuts on the film. So it makes it significantly easier on you, because it's accurate templates, but it also saves you a ton of time and money overall, because you're not wasting.
The Precut Lab in general, I'm sure he went over it, that it's for PPF and automotive window tint. And as far as PPF is concerned, it also is available with WPF patterns, so windshield protection patterns. I don't know if you touched on that one for our
Mhm.
PPF shield film. So that's been a really hot commodity lately, and we've been expanding and getting a lot of vehicles in for that. Tend to prefer going ahead and putting in bodyfence.net/EN for English and then /HPL. Otherwise, it'll come up in French because HEXIS is a French company. So just have them be aware of that. But anyway, once you're in here, you can find everything you kind of need, all your sign in or your register. So here, the registration is specifically for the actual website itself. This is not a subscription. This is just making a basic account through HPL. And then from there, you can go into the pricing page and be able to actually sign up for either a free trial or one of the subscription options. So as you can see here, the basic free trial, you can get it for up to 7 days, and or two cuts sent to the plotter. So that's what they mean when they say limited to two cars. It'll be two actual cuts, no matter how much. You could do a full vehicle template or one small test cut of, like, a single panel. And that will count against the free trial. And I've had plenty of people come to us on the assistance side of things for HPL, and they were having trouble connecting the plotter, or they miscut something and they didn't really get a chance. We can reset the free trials. It's not a big deal. They can just reach out to the contact page up in here, whether it's the US line, the or the Dubai line, excuse me, the European line. So any of these, or just through the actual contact form itself. Reach out and just, and it could be anything in general. This could be for patterns that don't align right, a missing pattern, pattern requests, or other admin and account troubles. If they're like on the cut credit plan and something miscut, they can have the credits added back to their account, stuff like that. So pretty much anything can be accessed help wise right through this contact page. So WhatsApp or text messages through the US number here, emails direct, or the form. So back on that pricing page, just to be able to run you guys through the different options that people can actually sign up for. I mentioned the cut credit. So this is for people who are not like power users of PPF. They do occasional installs, partial like front end stuff like that. It might be an upsell for their shop. So they might only need a few cuts every few weeks or even few months. They can just purchase a certain amount of square footage. So in this case, it's 377 square feet of cutting, and it never expires. It just lives in your account until you use it. And that's $35 every time. So you can kind of just reload as needed. Uh, from there, you bump up to either the monthly or the annual subscription. And this is just unlimited cutting. There's no restrictions on it whatsoever. You can just pay either $100 per month and pause it as needed, or you can just go for the annual subscription, get a big, deep discount. It's almost half off from paying monthly, but you are not able to pause it if like they're on vacation or they don't have a lot of PPF jobs. So it just depends on what pricing is going to work for them. Any questions so far, or Bristol, anything you'd like to add on pricing and subscribing?
No, nothing that I want to add, but Kristen did have a great question. She said, "Does this only work with certain brand plotters, or does it work with any brand?"
So we do have quite a large amount of plotters that are actually what's the word I'm looking for? Compatible. And it's all the major brands. So you got your Graphtec, Mimaki, HPLs, Rollins, but we also have the way the connection types are set up. You can go through. It's a little more difficult, but standard USB connection and a specialized setup inside the settings of the software, and you can get all sorts of third-party brands, all the random ones. And we see a lot of those. They're the Chinese brand plotters. A lot of them are in our South American market, but there are quite a few here. And I mean, we've got a full list. What I can show you, I can switch my screen sharing over to the software itself and give you guys a run through on that and in a little bit. So just remind me to show those setup options in there and what plotters are actually available. Right. Outside of that, right in here, this Browse Patterns tab. So without even logging in, as you can see, I'm not actually signed in yet on our account. You can go in here and on your phone, laptop, tablet, whatever, anywhere where you don't have to be in the shop, you can just be out and about, especially for like mobile tint shops, and they can actually check our actual library and availability of patterns. So this is kind of great if somebody's looking for something specific when they're first thinking about testing out the software, or if they're trying to get quotes and stuff done out, anywhere where they're taking calls or meeting up with customers. So you can go through the full thing. So that's just how this works, and it'll spit out all of the available patterns. So as you can see, a nice amount of patterns, and usually you'll get your full kit in there. Just to give you guys an idea of what it looks like after you've actually made or registered an account. So from here, you would go in after signing in, and this is where you actually download the Precut software. That link right off of your top menu. And of course, you can find it in a few other places, but that's the easiest. So if anybody's actually looking for it, that's the way to go. And otherwise, all of your actual account settings. So this is where you can check what your actual subscription tier is. And then you can go into your actual settings, and this is where you can switch from different currencies, or usually what I've noticed is that the default unit of measure will be set to meters. So this is a good one to change right off the bat. It cannot be changed inside of the Precut tool itself. So switch it over to feet and inches if that's the preference. Typically it is for most customers. From here, you can actually also add rolls. This is an interesting feature that's built into the software. So if they have 48-inch rolls or different film brands and stuff like that, they can go in and put in their costs and sizing. And the software, when the tool is used, can help you calculate square footage and costs when you have a certain amount of patterns set up on your cupboard. There we go. So this is the actual software. When you log in, you'll be greeted with your main just account info page. None of this is actually editable here. So as I was showing you, all the editing, if any of this needs to be updated, all has to be done on the website side. Um, Inside of here is the next best place to go when it's the first time actually logging in. So this is your settings page, and you got three main tabs. First one, this is your cut board. So basic stuff. You can set it to whatever you need or whatever works for your specific plotter setup. You can change this on the fly. So if I jump over to a cut board real fast, you can just see something I'm working on. So this is at a 46-inch size. If I go in and I change this over to 60, well, 63 apparently, it changes automatically without messing with anything else I'm working on. So this is just a quick swap that you can put in there. I actually do need the 46.71 for a future cut though. As far as the plotter connection, so this is where you can get into all of those options I was talking about for plotter compatibility. The main plotter USB connections are going to be this top option that says printer plotter. And that's where you'll actually go and find the different printers devices that are in Windows itself. For most plotters, they should appear here, like my Mimaki. But for anything specific, your Suma plotters, for example, they're going to have their own entire set of options separate from those. And anything connected via Ethernet is going to be your IP connection. Port 9100 is pretty much the standard for most plotters, but you can always check on the plotter itself. And the IP address is just something you have to pull from the plotter and how it's actually connected to the gateway. So both of these options can be found on the physical plotter itself. This is the one though, direct USB plotter is where you can get really complicated and really dive into a lot of different brands that are going to be available. So anything that doesn't have its own drivers built in, you would just go ahead and copy your file path from Windows. So it would be something along the lines of like, Windows drive C, username, and then you find the actual device and where it's connected on that USB and just copy and paste it here. But you'll go back into this page. And instead of your standard cutting protocols, HPGL tends to be the correct one to use. Oh, is it not showing that drop down? Well, there's a custom option, which opens up for plotters, all the different brands. So as you can see, quite an extensive list. And you can just pick any one that you need and select the model off of that, and it'll go ahead and preset the settings that are needed for the full connection. But for me and most people, HPGL is going to be the one to use. That's good for your Graphtec plotters. My Mimaki plotter is good with that. So it's a pretty universal standard. You shouldn't need to change that unless they're working with something very niche. And then a few other options. My personal favorite is feed after cut, and I think most installers would agree. So ticking this little box here, it's just when a cut is finished, instead of trying to guess and figure out where the last end of the cut was, it'll auto feed it. So you can pretty much just sheet cut right away. It's a nice time saver. And then these are just some overrides for speed and force if the plotter doesn't have those built in onto its own interface. I've almost never needed to use these, but it depends on what plotter model they've got. And as far as actually working with the software, you go up to your search vehicle library at the top left. And from there, it's again, same thing as on the website. You can just kind of go and pick whatever vehicle you're looking for. Actually, probably let me look for Porsche, because I do actually have a project with that coming up soon. The 911 992. And I need the GT3. Go 25. So to give you an idea, once you get all that in there, notice I skipped the region. This one is not necessary, but if you need to further filter your results, you can. Generally speaking, most vehicles now don't have a lot of region specific variants anymore, but there are still some out there. So occasionally it is useful to make sure you're working specifically with the North American brand versus the European trim line. Now, inside of this, you see we got a bunch of different patterns. I have filters over here, so if we need actual interior patterns for the center console in certain areas, if we need the exterior patterns for here, and if we need them either wrapped or unwrapped. And unwrapped being the true pre-cut, about 2 millimeters, 1 millimeter back from the actual panel edge, versus wrapped being the ones that actually do the full protection and would go fully around any body panels, usually by about 1/4 inch. And of course, tint patterns as well. So usually we pretty much have a full tint kit. In this particular case, let me just unfilter. You can select something like this and be able to either add all of them right here, or you can pick and highlight specific ones and then add selected. And you'll notice that it pops up over here with a little preview. You can add up to 5 different templates into one cupboard, and they will be color coded. So for now, let me jump back actually. And let's go ahead and add that as well. And then we can open our cupboard. So you can see it just all drops in nicely. For me, let me get rid of that notification. I can pull that bumper out, and you'll see when you actually drop in something that has been coming off of a larger pre-cut like this, it will match, which is nice. So you're not trying to figure out if I added in a bunch of these little pieces off of the bumper and it all gets jumbled up, it won't. It'll be in exactly the place that it should be. From here, it's pretty much a full suite of editing tools. So you can see all across the top, we got your basics for undo, redo, copy and paste, as well as zooming in and zooming out. Now, for some of these, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using the buttons. We have a whole list of shortcuts. So it's nice to get familiar with this for anyone that's asking if they're struggling with the UI or anything like that. They've got a lot of the basics, obviously copy, paste, control V, control C, nothing, that's going to be completely new to anybody. Grouping and ungrouping, all that good stuff. So it's nice to be able to have that as a quick reference. So for things like zooming in and zooming out, you just use your scroll wheel. One question I do get asked a lot is a lot of these installers are working on laptops. So their scroll function is typically the 2-finger scroll on the touchpad itself. They just never seem to figure that one out on their own, but they get there eventually. Rotating a piece, you can use the rotate button. I wouldn't recommend it. It's going to go based on the rotation degrees that you have set up in here. So if I need like a really large rotation, I can do that. But what you can actually do is hold down your control key and then use your scroll wheel. And you can get nice, easy, quick rotation that way. It's kind of the hotkey version. But yeah, being able to take this all the way down to 1 degree rotation. And, if I was working on something and I needed to do a specific kind of split, I've actually been, using this where I do a 90-degree rotation and get a perfect turn on it without having any guesswork. And it's really great for being able to line things up, merge things around, do any splits on them.
And Kyle, I,
Yes,
I don't want to interrupt you, but real quick, and I know you're probably getting ready to touch on it, but we had a question from Joe, a really good one. He asked, can we edit nodes and extend edges?
absolutely. Yes. So yeah, that's another couple of tools that are in here. So nodes mode, you can actually enter into it by double clicking or by using the actual tool button up here. But if you go in and you can see we've got all these different things. So when you actually go to edit a node, you'll select an actual, point on here, and the handles will also pop up, and you'll get this flyout menu. So you can either insert a point or delete a point. So if I needed to delete that point that I had just selected, there it's gone. If I need to insert a point and click, then I can just kind of hover and add my own. And then otherwise, it's all the same stuff you would expect with any other vector. You can pull it, readjust your angles here, and let me get my other handlebar and be able to do stuff like that. Now, what you might notice, I'll zoom in a little further just to make sure, the green line here is still visible even after I've been moving around my nodes. And that is to help you kind of get an idea of where the original template was before you started messing around with these. But then you can just double click to exit and your changes are saved on that pattern. And then what was out other than nodes, Bristol? What was the other thing that he was?
Nodes and extend edges.
Okay. So yeah, something like our partial wrap, we can do by selecting it. So you'll know it's selected when it's highlighted. And you have your partial wrap tool right up here. You also have bump. It goes based on segments. My personal preference is the partial. And let me zoom in because you'll be able to see that little red highlight following my mouse. So I can click to start and then click to end and I can expand or contract on the partial wrap. So in this case, I'm going to expand and there we go. And it adds it right in. Now, the other way to do that is to be able to use the bump tool and it'll go based on the segments. So when you actually are looking in nodes, you'll see where those segments are actually defined. Sometimes I found this useful for anything that doesn't have too many nodes going on. It's not a half bad little option, but my preference and most installers would agree the partial wrap tool tends to be best.
And Kyle, why would an installer or someone need to be able to edit nodes or bump out edges or anything like that?
Yeah, so it all depends on the preference of the installer, how they like to work, but also it could come down to pattern availability and what the customer is asking for. So say they're trying to do a matte or a satin finish PPF. They don't necessarily have a fully wrapped kit available. They only have the standard pre-cut. You're going to see gloss edges from the paint underneath. So at that point, you need to be able to go in and be able to make that pattern into a full wrap template and extend certain edges. But also, when you are trying to do a full wrap, some edges and body panels are really tight. You cannot force film in there. And if you do, it might actually vibrate around and slowly pull and push the film and make for a bad install. So you might also have to shorten edges up. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then
And
of course, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say while you're grabbing a drink, I'll give your voice a rest. Guys, I think it's important to mention, and as you could probably see from what Kyle was demoing, there are thousands and thousands of templates in here. But if you come across the template that's not in there, reach out to the support, and we can typically get those templates uploaded within about 72 hours. Typically, it's a lot quicker than that, but give it about a 72-hour range. So,
Yeah, it depends on the vehicle availability. A lot of them, they've already scanned a lot of these cars, and it's just there's a backlog of being able to convert them over into the actual templates themselves, flattening them back out, and being able to do a test run on them. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Because
usually,
it'll happen. I mean, there will be brand new model cars that come out and someone wants to PPF it right away, and you need to get a template for it. So,
yeah. But yeah, the team's great. They are responsive and very fast. Um, let's see. A few other tools that might be useful or at least worth mentioning is the split tool. So something like this can be really useful where you might have in here, I don't know this bumper that well, but say typically in bumpers is where I see it, you might need to be able to put in a relief cut for yourself so that you're not kind of fighting the film too much. It doesn't want, you don't want to overstretch that film in that area and risk it lifting later. Then you can add in relief cuts like that. On something like the hood, you might end up needing to do a partial hood. So you could end up doing your split down up tool. This one's really useful because you get a measurement on either side. So say I only needed 20 inches from the front end of the bumper, I can split it right here. Oops. And click. And then I can just delete that out of here. And we have our partial hood. So you can do that with, it all depends on the use cases. Now, the other thing you might notice with something like this, we have sub patterns built in. And, the general consensus is leave them in because you never know who's going to want them. But I do know most installers don't like having to work with those. They'd still rather end up doing those trims themselves just because that initial alignment is a lot easier. So what you can do is just get rid of them. Now, you can either, there's a couple of ways to do it, and the fastest way is to just use the sub pattern removal tool. So it'll just get rid of all of them. But if for whatever reason, you only needed to say get rid of the badge cutout in here, you can ungroup by doing Control U, and then from there you can go in and select that, and then just regroup your patterns, and we should be good to go. I hope, yes. Couldn't remember if I had tried them all or not. But yeah, so yeah, with something like this, with all these sensors and things going on, I mean, yeah, you can just do it super quick, like, and get rid of those. Don't need them, you know. Um, but for some people, and maybe on a car like this, you might actually leave those in just because another benefit of doing pre-cuts is to avoid the amount of time you need to put a knife anywhere near the paint on the car. So it's six of one, half a dozen of the other, depending on what the installer is comfortable with, how fast they want to move, and how confident they are with their skills. Yeah. I think that pretty much covers most of the tools. I mean, there's a few extra things we can talk about where you can add in different shapes to do welding and stuff like that. So that's always nice. It just depends on what they might be after. But one of the nice things that you can do is be able to save your projects. So save it, just call it my test board for now.
Kyle, but before you show off that feature, and I don't
Mhm.
mean to interrupt again, but can we show auto nesting? Because that's one that I get asked about quite often.
Let me go ahead and switch this back to a 60 inch because
Sorry.
otherwise it will not fit. Yeah. Um, I always lose track of that one, nesting. So you have a couple of options with nesting. For something like this, you can use your computer's own processing power, and it's good for a small amount of patterns, or you can go the standard cloud nesting. And what we found is the balance is actually really good. There's no need to wait 11 minutes for nesting, but I'm just going to do fast, really, really quick, just to show you. So the idea behind this is that it's going to run through a few different iterations and try and rotate around these pieces and see if how far it can condense them together to be able to maximize the amount of space you're using and reduce waste. Um, a lot of installers, they'll start with this, and I'm kind of in the same boat where I'll let the auto nesting kind of do its thing, and then I'll go in and tweak it just a little bit more because it does have some safety parameters where with human eyes and being really zoomed in, you can put these patterns like a millimeter or less from each other, and if your plotter is good enough, it will cut just fine. But they do have it where there's usually somewhere in the realm of like, five to 10 millimeters of safety zone for certain things. So it might not be as efficient as doing it by hand, but it can still save you a whole lot of time if you're putting in the entire front end of a car or a full PPF pattern for an entire vehicle in. But there you go. So we can just drop that in. Oops, forgot. Shouldn't have moved. But there we go. So it will nest those, and then as you saw, it'll drop them in where you click. So you can just grab them all together and be able to move them in unison. Now, what I'm noticing is if I look really close at that, I think one of these patterns, I'm just going to move it a little more just to be sure. So you'll see that that is overhanging, but say I didn't notice that and I go to cut, it will give me a warning. And I can also trigger that at any time by looking for it. But if I actually do, you'll see an overlap or a piece that is overhanging and it flashed red at me. So we know that this one's going to be a troublemaker. So that's a nice little safety feature as well. So you don't go and cut an entire pattern and like say two patterns were overlapping with each other like that and you didn't notice right in here or here and you end up wasting another 10 feet of film to try and recut another bumper. So it will give you automatic warnings whether you ask for it or not. But it's always good. It's actually saved me about 5 or 6 times when I really thought I had it, and like looking from here, like this area looks fine, and then you get in and it's just barely touching on the pattern. So it will actually find that as an overlap. Any other questions that have come through? And I can move on to save board feature.
No, nothing that I see in here. Does anybody have any questions that don't want to put them in the chat? Feel free to ask.
Yeah, because then I saved that board earlier. So what I can do is go into my save boards menu, and that's where you can just find anything that you've saved before. So it's really useful if you're going in and you're making all of these edits, adding relief cuts, doing partial trims and wraps like that. You can then just go in and actually come back and load up an old cut board. If you get Teslas in all the time or your certain trucks and different things like that, you can go ahead and bring on those patterns. Um, and otherwise, you have up to 5 tabs down here of active cut boards that you can have at any one time. So as you can see, I've been working with a lot of windshields lately. But that's always nice to be able to swap between them. And the other thing you can do is pull those in. Say you have a very custom piece that you've done, but you're working on something else, and you can actually copy and paste between boards as well and bring them back onto something else. So also, if you forgot a pattern off of this Porsche, you can go in, open up a new cut board with that, and then just copy and paste it in. So you're not having to worry about multiple cut boards starting over, anything like that.
Or do we have any question? I mean, because really, and Kyle knows this, I mean, you could spend hours and hours in this software and looking at all the features and stuff, but we kind of just wanted to give you guys a kind of a brief overview, just, some quick actions like Kyle was showing some of the tools about the software, the purpose of the software. But does anybody have any questions? Or Kyle, do you have any last things that you want to mention about the software? We appreciate it, and Kyle and I and the rest of the HEXIS team are always here to help. So ask questions, and good luck to whoever wins the subscription. That'll be really cool.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Well, thank you
Awesome.
guys for joining us, and thank you all for presenting. Really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. We couldn't be where we are without partners like you, and thank you very much for doing this. And thanks everyone for attending. Eric Garcia says, I don't really have a question, just want to say the software looks pretty cool. And thank you for sharing. Oh, thanks, Eric.
All right, Eric.
Yeah, we'll give a
Awesome.
shout
Well,
out to you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you